Blessings, namaste, and love, everyone. I'm spiritualist, psychic, astrologer, and medium Sette. As always, thank you for offering me this opportunity to share with you my astrological and spiritual insights. And in this segment, we are looking to the month of October 2024. Let me begin by saying we are still in our eclipse season. We had a lunar eclipse on September 17th, and our next eclipse, which is a solar eclipse, and that will take place on October 2nd, 2024. As always, I begin by emphasizing, whenever I'm addressing the new moon, I always begin by emphasizing the balsamic moon phase, which is that preparatory cycle opportunity of experience to prepare for the coming new moon. Now, because our next new moon, which is a solar eclipse, we are offered a greater amount of time to prepare for whatever is coming together at that eclipse. And quite often, it's at least 3 months prior to the eclipse event. So the July 4th, 3rd, 4th new moon began the opportunity to energetically prepare for this eclipse. I will go a little bit further to suggest to reflect on what really was coming together for you at the time of the last solar eclipse, which was also known as the Great American Eclipse on April 8th. So just allow yourself to reflect on everything that took place for you during the spring time frame. What did you initiate at that time? Also during the summer months, because it began the time to prepare for this eclipse coming up on October 2nd. It's also a what I refer to as a trigger point, which was another opportunity to move forward with whatever you began in April. This time now, it's another opportunity to continually move forward on your journey with whatever you set in motion, either at the time of the Great American Eclipse on April 8th or the new moon, which took place on July 2nd. Now, the balsamic moon phase, it begins on September 28th at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is generally the time that we are to prepare for the coming lunar eclipse. So if perhaps for whatever reason you were not necessarily aware of the significance of this eclipse, or rather this new moon coming up, and you didn't allow yourself the opportunity to really begin getting yourself ready for what is to come, do not worry about it. If you're hearing these words now, this is exactly when you need to receive this information. So the lunar eclipse, the solar eclipse, because it's an intensified, concentrated new moon, it begins a longer term cycle of experience. A regular new moon begins a 30-day cycle of experience. Actually, it's about, more precisely, 27 and a quarter day cycle of experience. The new moon brings a beginnings of a longer cycle of experience, sometimes 3 months, sometimes 6 months, even sometimes years. Whatever casts in motion at the time of the eclipse really stays with us. That's why we were always suggesting to be abundantly aware of everything that you are engaging in on the day before, of, and after the new moon. All of that will stay with us for a longer duration of time. So just allow yourself, as much as possible, be aware of all the intentions that you are setting in motion. Be mindful of your thoughts and your words, more so on those days, because those are power points for us to really tap into our creative potential. Remember, I've talked about this for many, many years, how every one of us has, one, a great potential, but also that we're creative beings and that we are creating all that we encounter, all of our experiences. And when we are mindful of all the thoughts that we cast in motion, all the words that we use to create our realities. Remember, there's a reason as to why spelling is vocabulary is referred to as spelling, because with those words we cast spells. So be mindful of all of this, especially as we continually move through this eclipse season. There's so many powerful opportunities, especially in this month of October. Energy is shifting. We are at turning points. There is much being amplified at this time. Always be mindful of your personal experiences, and remember, whenever there is anything which may seem to be negative in the outside world, we always have the ability and the opportunity to counteract that negativity whenever we understand how to properly work with the energies, work with spirit, be mindful of the tools, the spiritual tools available to keep yourself grounded, energetically shielded and protected from the discord, but also too, be mindful of the tools available so that you can clear away any accumulated discord which may interfere with your wellness and your well-being. Now, our solar eclipse is on October 2nd. The exact time of the solar eclipse is 2:49 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's the precise moment of the eclipse when the new moon and when the sun and the moon come together and begin the new next cycle of experience. Now, the eclipse is in the sign of Libra. Specifically, it's at 10 degrees of Libra. And one of the most significant elements of this eclipse, Libra very much represents nature in the natural world. This is yet another opportunity to be aware and be mindful of our connection with nature, as well as the presence of spirit that exists in the natural world. Nature provides us with so many blessings. One being the blessings of remaining grounded. When we anchor ourselves with the element of the earth, the energies of the earth, it assists us in remaining grounded, especially when there are surges of energies in the outside world. And there is a tremendous amount of energy being amplified out there right now. Remember, none of this is necessarily bad or good. It's what we choose to create with the energy. Remember, the opportunity is to be aware of how to create and to employ this energy and bring forth the many blessings, especially our desires. You know, the word actually comes from, if you just look at the word desire of the Father, of spirit, of the universe, if you will. Remember, those, whatever it is that is our greatest desires, you know, especially when it comes from a place of love, remember that is very much in conjunction with what the universe, prime creator, source, mother, father, God, however you want to refer to it, would enjoy for us to really receive while we are in this human form. Many times we don't allow ourselves to really honor our desires. Also, be mindful, there's a difference between want and desire. I suggest, as always, want nothing, desire everything. When we are in that place of wanting, we inadvertently are creating lack by inadvertently creating the state and the being of wanting. The desire fuels that fire that's within ourselves and strengthens and assists us in bringing to form and creating those desires. The Libra element is also very much about creativity. Leo as well as Libra represent creativity, art, and music. Libra a little bit more so represents art and music, but what I emphasize right now is, once more, to recognize how we are creative beings and that we are bringing forth all that we encounter. It's when we are not allowing ourselves to be aware of the creative process of thought, word, and deed that often we miscreate and we bring to form things which we may not necessarily would enjoy experiencing. So observe this solar eclipse as yet another opportunity to awaken to the creative power within yourself. But one of the stronger elements, or the more important or the more significant components of this eclipse, is creating balance. If we are experiencing imbalance in our lives, the energies of the eclipse will bring forth whatever may be necessary to create balance. Again, I'm going back to using nature as an example. Just observe in nature how nature will always innately create a balance wherever there is imbalance. When all these experiences come to an extreme, to, like, for example, to like a crisis point, that's when we've not been aware of what is necessary on our part to correct any discord, as well as creating a balance in our own lives. When we work in harmony and in conjunction with spirit and the higher realms and nature, we very much allow ourselves to really experience much more harmony and peace in our own lives. That Libra element, because it's ruled by Venus, certainly represents beauty, but also love as well. So many of us don't allow us to really be in that place of love within ourselves. So if you're finding that perhaps you may be less than loving to yourself, perhaps at this eclipse, really choose and be very humble with this choice to be in that place of love within yourself and really observe yourself from that place of love. And as I was referring a few moments ago, the importance of creating balance and how the energies of the eclipse will very much assist us in creating a balance where there may be disharmony in our lives. Do not resist if you are feeling this shift of energy taking place. When we resist, then quite often we interfere with the process and we create disruptions, and we inadvertently cause these experiences to be much more challenging for us. Nature lovingly creates this balance. Nature does not resist. I always like to use the analogy that here in the northern hemisphere, we are in the fall time frame. On September 22nd, we had the autumn equinox. We had the celebration of Mabon. Just observe how during the fall time frame, the trees lovingly surrender their leaves without resistance, without trepidation, because nature understands the significance and the importance of surrendering to the flow of energy and to releasing that which no longer serves the purpose. The leaves during the spring and the summer months served a greater purpose for the trees. And now during this time, because it's time for the trees to rest and retreat a little bit, it surrenders their leaves. But also too, there's also a greater significance to the surrender of leaves, because as those leaves decompose, it nourishes the soil and provides food for certain elements, even the natural nature elements, if you will. With those who are familiar with Taoism, there's so many correlations to nature and these wonderful experiences that we can have for ourselves, and to observe how nature allows itself to really work with the cycles of the seasons and the cycles of experience. It would serve every one of us a greater significance when we allow ourselves to work with these cycles, especially the cycles of nature, as to the many reasons we look to these astrological alignments, so we can be inspired to work with these cycles of nature. In astrology, everything is about cycles. Everything is cyclical. And again, when we understand how to work with those energies, we bring forth so much more of what it is that we desire, and we don't necessarily have to contend with those miscreations. So once again, I'm referring to the solar eclipse on October 2nd. It is an intensified new moon, which begins a greater cycle of experience. Be mindful, as I mentioned earlier, of all that you are casting in motion on the day before, of, and after the solar eclipse, and allow yourself, if you feel comfortable doing so, to just surrender to these cycles of experience. That surrender opportunity is very much present during the month of October. Certainly with these eclipses, but we also have another significant phenomena taking place. Now, I've referred to quite a few times in these segments regarding Pluto and how it's shifting energies, it's changing signs. Pluto returned to Capricorn at the beginning of September, and it is retrograde, and it will move direct on October 11th, and the exact time of that is 8:32 p.m. That's when Pluto, actually it's referred to as the station point, where it appears to stand still and change directions. That's when it will begin moving forward. Now, Pluto has been in the late degree of Capricorn. Whenever an element is in the late degree of any sign, it's an intensified clearing process, and it heightens the opportunity to really bring forth and welcome the energies and the opportunities of that next sign. Pluto will fully return to Aquarius on November 19th. That's when it will begin its cycle of experience in Aquarius at full force. I've spoken quite often how one of the greatest potential of Pluto is the opportunity for every one of us to really tap into our power. You know, we all have, as I mentioned regarding the Libra energies and that creative potential, we all have the power to create. During the month of October, and with these shifts of energy, specifically with Pluto, I'll also talk about it a little bit more as I begin to address the full moon. Pluto, again, represents great power. It's when that power is misused, that's when it doesn't necessarily serve a greater purpose. The power of Pluto is for us to empower ourselves. That's another Pluto element. The opportunity to be empowered, self-empowered. When we endeavor towards overpowering another, controlling another, inflicting our will on another, that's the lower demonstration of Pluto and does not serve a greater purpose. So much of these surges of energy that have been taking place in these last few years have been inspiring every one of us to recognize this power within ourselves. This power is equal to the power which created everything under heaven and earth, everything, all elements that exist in nature. This is the power that created all of that, and we have the same potential to do just that, to create and to bring to form. And again, when we understand how to work in alignment with all of these amazing opportunities. Pluto will begin its passage of Aquarius, as I said, on November 19th. My goal is to create a video specifically dedicated towards the discussion of highlighting my insights into the Pluto Aquarius transit, which will last about 20 years. One of the many experiences that will take place as Pluto goes into Aquarius is, wherever Pluto transits, it transforms. As Pluto begins its passage of that sign. Also those in those professions who may not necessarily be in alignment with a higher vibration will no longer serve a purpose. And those of us who have been dedicated towards being very humanitarian, because the sign of Aquarius is very much about being humanitarian and that humanitarian element. These experiences are really what's going to catapult moving forward the ushering in of the age of Aquarius, which I've shared this understanding quite a few times, I believe, in the past. Personally, by my calculations, the actual age of Aquarius may not necessarily begin until about the year 2165, which has to do with alignment with Uranus and Neptune. That being said, it does not infer that we won't have the opportunity to really enjoy the blessings of oneness and brotherhood. And by us having these opportunities now to enjoy the blessings of oneness and brotherhood, we are further ushering in this age of Aquarius. Forgive me, as always, I seem to digress, and sometimes, right before I begin creating these segments, I jot down a few notes, but I also allow myself to really be guided and to be shown what it is I need to add and include in these videos. And that's why sometimes if you notice that I'm hesitating, I'm actually receiving information and being shown certain things that Spirit is asking me to share with you in these segments. Before I begin creating this experience, I always set forth the intention that whatever I share in these videos will be inspirational, and whoever needs this information will in some sort of way hear these words and find this video. Now, our next full moon is on October 17th, and the exact time of the full moon is 7:26 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now, there is a very powerful configuration between the Sun and the Moon, as well as Mars and Pluto. Pluto is referred to as the higher octave of Mars. Now, what is created is what's known as a T-square aspect. So if you can just imagine, the Sun and Moon are opposite to one another. Pluto and Mars are opposite one another, and each of those segments are 90 degrees apart, creating a square alignment. That in and of itself contains a tremendous amount of power, specifically creative power. Those 90-degree angles, they're associated with the Mars element. There's a lot of energy in all of that, but what I refer to, or rather what I inspired to recognize, is all of that power equals creativity. There's a tremendous amount of creative energy taking place right now. We're also going to feel the energy being very intensified in these coming months. And that being said, it doesn't mean that it's necessary for us to have a negative impact from all those shifts of energy. This is very much a time for us personally, as well as the collective, to catapult forward on our spiritual evolutionary process. Those square elements present a time of great and powerful change. Remember, that change fortifies creative growth. When we are not necessarily comfortable with the change, that's when there are difficulties with the growth. Remember, change fortifies creative growth. So many are being inspired, have been inspired to really recognize their higher purpose during these times, because that higher purpose will serve a greater purpose for the all of humanity. So at the time of our full moon, and even the week before the full moon, the week of the full moon, and even the week after the full moon, just be mindful. There are tremendous amounts of energies surging and shifting. We may feel potentially, especially those of us who are acutely sensitive to these shifts in energy, can feel the overwhelm a little bit more. And once again, it does not infer that these experiences need to have a negative impact on our wellness and well-being when we understand how to properly work with these energies and these cycles of experience, as well as employing the tools which will assist us in remaining grounded, shielded, and protected, as well as clear ourselves of any accumulated discord. Now, on October 22nd, the Sun transits into the sign of Scorpio. The exact moment of that is October 22nd at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on October 22nd. The sign Scorpio is the sign which most represents the psychic faculties, as well as our connections with the spirit realm. certainly during the time of Halloween, which is also known as Samhain, as well as All Souls Day, All Saints Day. These are those moments are the opportunities, one, to honor those who have transitioned into the spirit realm, our loved ones who are no longer with us in physical form, to honor these never dissevered connections that we have with our loved ones, even though they are in the spirit realm. They're still very much with us, and because they are operating at a higher vibrational frequency, we can't always see them with our human eyes. However, we are very much inspired, especially during this time of year, certainly to honor those connections and to remember that we are connected with spirit. Scorpio, as I said, is the sign which most represents the connections and our connections with the spirit realms, whether it be our loved ones, our spirit guides, the higher beings, whatever that might be. To honor those connections and know that we have the opportunity to be acutely aware of the presence of our loved ones, as well as how spirit is guiding us. Every one of us has a psychic intuitive potential. So this time of year, we're also inspired to remember that as well. It doesn't necessarily suggest that we are to conduct psychic experiences or psychic sessions for others. It's so that we can remember and we can be aware of how we are being guided by spirit through these etheric connections. A part of these shifts of energies are that many of us, not every one of us, but many of us are receiving what we refer to as downloads from the higher realms. These connections, the connection with the higher mind, the higher self, is very much being energized, especially at the time of the solar eclipse and this full moon. Sometimes we feel very overwhelmed by these exchanges of energies, and that occurs when we're not etherically and properly grounded with the earth energy. I've been saying and inspiring all of us to continually look up. The majority of humanity is always looking down, especially on these devices that we have. And when we're engaging in those experiences, we might be missing the opportunity to look up and to observe what might be occurring in the heavens. So my suggestion is, even if it's for one day, put down all the devices and actually, for one, really look at each one of us, especially when we're communicating with each other, but also look up to the heavens. We may observe some spectacular shows in the heavens. How that might unfold, we'll see what happens. That being said, as always, I am psychic spiritualist, astrologer and medium Ray Sette. I thank you for offering me this opportunity to share with you some of the many astrological alignments that take place during a given month, as well as my spiritual insights into how we can really embrace and employ all these energies, so every one of us has the opportunity to enjoy the blessings of our birthright. Until we meet again, remain in the light, forever in a place of perfect love and perfect trust. Many blessings. Namaste.